What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Serje podcast. I'm your host, Fernandez Serje.
And I'm your co-host, Kayla McAlexander.
The Serje podcast was brought to you by M&T Professional Cleaning Service. If you're in the San Antonio, Austin, or Houston area, need residential, commercial, window cleaning, power washing, anything in that nature, hit these guys up. Mention the podcast and get 10% off discount your first cleaning.
Also, shout out to one of our sponsors, Fuego Supplements. Go on their website, fuegosups.com. Use our promo code Serje, that's SERJE, and get 10% off your cart.
Just a fashion statement.
Lately I ain't sleeping much, I'm staying up at night, wondering if all the choices that I make are right. A lot of people doing music for a piece of pie, but all I ever really wanted was some peace of mind. So here's a piece of mind, come inside my life.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Serje podcast. With me today, kicking off our little mini-series about sexual and physical assault, Dr. Lawerence. Dr. Lawerence is actually the Associate Dean of the Behavioral and Social Sciences Department at Wayland Baptist University. So let's get it started.
How's it going, man?
Good, Dr. Lawerence. Thank you so much for making time for this. I know you're a busy man, and I truly appreciate you being here.
Happy to do it. Thanks for the invite.
Anytime. So, Dr. Lawerence, you do the Title IX announcements, presentations at the beginning of the year to the students, correct?
Yes, sir.
So Dr. Lawerence was actually one of the first people that came to mind when this project kind of came out to be, because this man impacted me as well as the rest of the Serje podcast team just because of his energy, the way he does his presentations, and we thought who better to have on to just come on and introduce what we're trying to raise awareness for than him. So why don't we start with a little bit of your background, whatever you feel comfortable with sharing.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm from Lubbock, Texas, and I went to Texas Tech undergrad. Also went to Texas Tech for law school. And as far as the awareness with rapes and sexual assaults, domestic violence, whatnot, I volunteered with the Rape Crisis Center when I was in undergrad. So I've been in this area probably for about 20 years. So also teach a rape class here at Wayland. Also serve as the Title IX administrator here at Wayland, and I work with lots of students, lots of student athletes all across the country in this area, and raising awareness and bringing about prevention through education. So I was really excited when I got the invitation from you and what you're doing and raising awareness in this campaign, and so I just wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I really appreciate it. And like I told you before we started the podcast, people are like you guys are what's inspire the future generation, example us, right? You guys inspire us, and your passion, the way you do things, and it's so genuine. Like, it doesn't look like you're trying, it just looks like you're you up there talking to us, mostly when you talk to the male side of things, you always say real men, real talk.
Right.
You keep it real
That's
with
right.
us, and that's the best thing that somebody can do in order to impact somebody else.
I think that's everybody talks about generational differences and what you have to do to reach this generation, that generation. And I don't think your generation is any different than mine. We wanted somebody real when I was in school, and you all want somebody real. And I think that the generations coming after us, they just want realness. They want authenticity. And so that's what I try to bring every day.
Right, and we truly appreciate it. So Girls Who Conquer, the people we're teaming up with, they're actually reaching out to the future generations as well with their annual conferences. They try to bring women in or from ages 12 to 18, and they pretty much give them tools as well as any resources necessary to succeed in life. And that's why I'm so involved. That's why I'm so passionate about this, because there's this negative side of things where people in my generation just like to bash on older generations because they did say that, whatever. Like, there's people that just want the best for us,
Mm-hmm.
So why aren't we talking about that? Why aren't those things on the news?
That's right. It's really good.
So let's start off with why you chose this career.
I guess why not?
Right.
One of the things that I knew coming out of law school is that I wanted to teach. But one of the things that I've learned about teaching is allows me to communicate. And so I initially started so that I could teach, so that I could equip people, so that I could empower people, so that I could change lives the way people change my life. And eventually I learned that I needed to just really focus more on communication, because teaching, you can take something that's very simple and make it complicated, but communicators take something that's very complicated and make it simple. And so that's why I do what I do. That's why this career, I love working with students. I love impacting people and helping them to get where they're called to go, to push them to where, to do the things that they've been created to do. And so somebody was there for me. Somebody pushed me, somebody helped me, somebody believed in me, somebody saw something in me. They saw the raw talent and they cultivated it in me. And so now that's what I want to do, is help other people. And so what I call it is reaching back and moving them forward. And so always helping the next person. And I hope that others would be inspired to do the same thing, because somebody helped me. I always tell people, you if you see a turtle on a fence post, the turtle didn't get there by itself. Somebody helped them to get there. And so that's me. Somebody helped me to do everything that I'm doing. And so my role is to help other people to get to where they need to get to.
Exactly. And just like the people that we've had previously in the podcast, there are those people out there that just spread their wings and take people under and just bring them up as leaders, Like I've said before, sometimes we get a little too greedy and we know how to do something, and instead of teaching somebody how to do it to the full potential that they can, we stop it through the fact that some people might not want them to be at the same level. And that's when people like you come in. That's when you're a leader yourself. You're in this position of power, and you're like, hey, let me put you under my wing so I can bring you exactly to my eye level, so that way I can make more leaders and you can go impact them too.
That's it.
So
it's all about equipping. One of my missions is to equip today's leaders for tomorrow's success. And I just believe that if you hold on to everything you've got, that you'll never get anything else. And the other thing is, you can't be jealous of other people. I mean, why would you want to stop somebody else from impacting people? The more people that are impacting others, I can't reach everybody myself. You can't reach everybody. But if we get a big team, hey, and we reproduce, that's right. And we can reach anybody.
Yes. And
somebody needs to hear the message.
That's the awesome part about what you do, because you impact students' lives every day. That's the awesome thing about the ability that I have with this podcast, and reaching people outside of just Plainview in Texas. That's what my dad, I always use my parents as an example, because they bring in people into their own company, and they're like, hey, let me teach you how to do this, so you can come up and kind of maybe take over it someday. Like none of their kids want to take over their business right now.
Yeah.
So they're looking for the next person to be able to do that. So, and that's just my thing. Leaders making other leaders, not followers.
That's right.
And that's what kind of we try to preach out there. But
I love it.
For those of you that didn't know, so the project we're doing is we're marching from Plainview, Texas down to Lubbock. Me and my buddy Hunter White, he was on the podcast earlier too. And we're doing this because it's a combined of 98 miles. And the point of that 98 is that every 98 seconds, someone falls victim to sexual assault. And every 11 minutes, it's a child, right? So what we're trying to do is do the physical labor and physical part of it to, show you guys that somebody else cares and someone else is out there knowing that we're kind of speaking for the unspoken. And with Dr. Lawerence here, it's perfect, because our lead question is for him is pretty much like, how do you define sexual or physical assault?
The first thing you have to do is just look at the word abuse. So it's abuse. So you're using something abnormally. You're using something that's not, you're using it for a purpose that it wasn't meant to be used. And so one of the things we look at with sexual and physical abuse, lots of times it comes through power. Sometimes it comes through coercion. You have consent. That's an issue where somebody has not consented to this particular activity. And so you have to look at those dynamics. You got to look at the power. You got to look at the power differentials. You got to look at consent. You got to look at whether there's coercion that's involved, and if there's some kind of manipulation that is involved. And so you got to analyze all of these different areas to see sexual abuse and physical abuse. But lots of times these are crimes of power. So crimes of control. I want to have control over this person. It's not even that they necessarily want to rape somebody or to physically abuse somebody, but it's about control. I want to have control over you. I want to physical abuse. I want to isolate you from everybody else so that I can manipulate you so that you'll do what I want you to do and you'll be solely tied to me, no one else. I want to put you in fear. I want to have you dependent on me. And so we see that with physical abuse and domestic violence, and we also see it as a cycle.
Yes,
it's we, we're nice, then we're walking on eggshells, then we have an outbreak, we have crisis, there's an abuse that takes place, and then we have an apology, and we just continue the cycle. And one of the things about physical abuse is that lots of times people do not want the perpetrator who did perform the physical abuse on them to be, they don't want to report that. They don't want to have that person to get in trouble with law enforcement or anything like that. They want to protect that person. They're loyal to that person. But the other thing is that they're fearful of what that person is going to do if they find out. So now they're worried about another word that we'd like to talk about, which is retaliation. And so when we look at sexual assault, lots of times it's the same thing. Sometimes they don't want to report it. There's lots of sexual assaults that happen. I heard you talk about the 98 seconds. I believe that it's probably even, a bigger number than that.
Wow, that's crazy.
Because, we got to think about the things that aren't being reported. There's
yes.
lots of stuff that goes underreported. And so people like to talk about, well, people are just making stuff up or they're filing false reports. But
why would someone do that,
I don't think they do. I think that the real narrative is underreporting, That's why what you're doing and what I do is so important, that we educate people so that they will report. And one of the things that my message, like you referenced that earlier, the real men, real talk, is that, rape is a man's issue. Because lots of times we're too busy telling women don't get raped that we're not telling men not to rape. And so that's the narrative that we got to get out, because there wouldn't be rape if there were no rapists. And so,
exactly.
And not people that, a lot of people look at people who commit these sexual assaults and they look at them all as rapists, but sometimes it's just communication gone wrong, or, boundaries were crossed, or people didn't understand consent. And so there's a lot of different things, that alcohol, drugs were involved.
Exactly,
maybe the person was
yes.
asked over and over again and they just gave in, or they felt like because they said yes to this that they had to say yes to that, or they just laid still. There's a lot of different things that go on. And so we have to expose all of the different areas and just educate in those areas.
Exactly. One of the biggest things that I got out of every time I hear your speeches is the fact that, hey, if there's alcohol involved, straight no-go.
That's right.
Straight no-go. Now it's so much that you hear of this, like, oh, we were at a party, we were both drinking, this and that. Okay, if there's alcohol involved, like, it's a complete no-go.
That's right.
And that's where the excuses try to come in. But they don't understand someone under the influence can't give consent because they're not in their right state of mind.
That's right. Their judgment is impaired.
Exactly.
And you can't give consent if you're drunk.
Yes.
You've been drinking. Your judgment is impaired. And so the safe thing is just if there's been drinking, then there doesn't need to be any sex. That's right.
It's exactly because mostly I think it's the fact that people think, oh, we're just, drunk. We're hooking up, right? We're both drunk, all that kind of stuff. No, like at the end of the day, like, you're at fault for thinking that way first. Yeah. And second, you should have never put yourself in that situation. That's what people don't want to talk about.
Or we think it's easy. The other thing is that sometimes people do this because they think it's easier for them to get to where they want to go, or easier to be able to do what they want to do. So the alcohol is in, or the drink is spiked, or different things like that. Because sometimes people do this through manipulation, as they know that this person is not going to be able to handle alcohol, or they know that it's going to be easier. Their guard is going to get down, and they're not going to tell them no, or they're not even going to remember what happened at the end of the night.
Exactly. And I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's this commercial that's called "Thank You for Not Telling."
I haven't seen that one yet.
So it's pretty much these different scenarios in which, like, so for example, the biggest one was there's a guy at the bar talking to a girl. This girl gets distracted and the dude drops in whatever on her drink, right? Turns around and says, "Thanks for not telling." They're at a what looks like a college party, and there's this girl passed out drunk. This guy's taking pictures of her or whatever, stops and looks at the camera and says, "Thanks for not telling." And that I saw that. and it just spoke to me, and I was like, man, that's so crazy how we consciously choose to ignore things, because obviously they wouldn't make a commercial like that for no reason.
It wasn't real. That's right.
Exactly.
That was more than we know.
And at the end, it turns around and it brings the good side of things, like having the good friends at the party. It's like, thanks for getting me out of this situation. Having the good bartender there being like, hey, don't drink this, I just saw this happen. Or the good person at the bar saying, hey, thanks for letting me know about this. Let's kind of move on from there to, why do you think that people don't report these things?
Well, that's a great question. So I have a legal background, also serving as Title IX administrator. So one of the things that you have to understand with the police and rape is that there's a much higher threshold. So rape has to be proved beyond a reasonable doubt. And so if alcohol was involved, then it's harder for them to prove. In the Title IX world, sexual assault, I don't like to use the word rape, but sexual assault, all you have to have is 50% plus a feather. It's preponderance of evidence. And we have rules that state, that with consent, you can't be incapacitated, you can't be intoxicated, you can't be influenced. All of those things are going to show that you don't have consent. And so the law, that each state has is going to be very different than the federal guidelines that we have for Title IX. So I feel like a lot of people feel like the police can't do anything about it because they've seen so many rapists get off. They've seen so many rapists go free. They've seen so many cases that were just dismissed because they didn't have enough evidence. And so that's one of the reasons that they don't have the confidence in the legal system. One of the things that the legal system has done well is they have rape shield laws where you can't bring into question somebody who's been the victim of a rape. You can't bring in their sexual history or, really antagonize them on the stand, but they are very, very different. Beyond a reasonable doubt is a very high threshold. That's 99.9%. There's not hardly any room for doubt, beyond a reasonable doubt. So cases are just very hard to prove. And so that's why a lot of people, I think maybe even more, think that they can't do anything about it because they're not seeing anything done. You see your organization, you see myself, you see the other organizations that you're working with, you see all kinds of national organizations that are working in the area of helping sexual assault victims and rape victims, but you haven't seen the law come in and protect people. You have, we protect kids, but we don't protect people that are the same age. We don't protect 2 college students. We don't protect two grown adults. We protect a child from a grown person. We do that, but we don't do that. The law doesn't protect in that area. And so that's why I think that you see a lot of people not believing in the police. And I'm not going to say that it's the police's fault, but the threshold is so high that it's almost impossible to prove.
No, I get that. And so some stats that, from the RAIN organization, right? So they say that from 2005 to 2010, the victims who did not report, right, 9% say that they believe the police would not or could not do anything to help. Yeah. But that just takes away from the fact that they're there. That takes away from the fact that you do have somewhere to go. Like, if it happens, there's always a option A that should be the police. Like, just go right away, report it. And then we move on to 12% that believe that it was not important enough to report. That's kind of bringing your self-value down because at the same, you went through this, like, this is going to be with you the rest of your life, and you don't believe it's important enough to report?
I'll tell you why they don't report. The reason they don't report, 1, is because they think not anything's going to get done, but 2, they blame themselves. So lots of times, well, if I hadn't have been drinking, that wouldn't have happened. I knew I shouldn't have gone to that room. I knew I shouldn't have gone behind that closed door. You have lots of times with sexual assaults, once somebody gets you behind the closed door, it's a 99% chance that it's going to happen. But a lot of times people say, well, I shouldn't have put myself in that situation. I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have been there. I shouldn't have drank this. I shouldn't have been with this person. I shouldn't have separated myself from my friends. And so a lot of times people internalize it and they blame themselves. There's enough victim blaming that goes on in society, but we actually have victims that blame themselves. So you have victims that participate in victim blaming, and that's where you get that 12% stat from, because they just feel like, I'm not going to say they don't think it's important, but they don't think that they think they're not going to be believed. they've internalized it and they blame themselves. And so there's a lot of things that are going on in their head. And the other thing is that they're traumatized. You got to understand that if you don't have an advocate, if you don't have somebody who's educating you, if you've never been a part of a presentation or education session, you know, maybe you just heard about something on the internet. If you're not educated, that's why what you're doing is so important. You've got to educate the masses on this, and I think you'll see those numbers change a great deal. But the reason you're not is because people are just not educated about these matters, and when it happens, it's too late. So we've got to be proactive instead of reactive in getting this message out.
Yeah, and so with self-blaming, right? I want to hit up a little bit of the fight and flight that we have in our head, right? Or that our body reacts, right? Because so I don't know if you're familiar with the show 13 Reasons Why.
Yeah, very familiar.
Yeah, you know, and critics talk about it and they're like, hey, this is what people don't understand. People always want to blame victims, saying, oh, why didn't you fight back? Oh, why didn't you do this? And the fact is that I did my own research on it, right? And the fact is, like, a flight reaction is to shut down.
That's right.
It's for your body to shut down, so you can't.
And it does.
Yeah, and at the same time, I don't want to, like, I'm not saying I wish this on anybody or anything, but we weren't in that position. We weren't behind those closed doors when those people threw them on the bed and did this or there's things that
they're in survival mode.
Exactly.
They're just trying to survive and get through it. They know it's wrong. They don't like it. They're not participating in it. But that goes along with the rape myths, because another myth that you have there is sometimes people have been sexually assaulted and had an orgasm. Doesn't mean that they weren't sexually assaulted.
I completely get that point, you know. And again, like that's what we just don't point out. That's why we try to be like, oh, you could have done more. One, you weren't in their shoes. You don't know what happened. And the crazy thing is, I'll tell you what, I had this guy contact me and tell me his story, right? And he pretty much said that he was sexually abused by another male. Yep. And he goes, dude, I was trying to fight. The dude was drunk. His strength just increased immensely. I was trying to fight back. And right when the moment happened, I got the strength to just push him off and run out, you know? Yeah. This guy literally ran out of his own apartment because he invited this person into his house thinking he was being a good friend, and runs out of his apartment. His clothes were torn, all this other stuff. And then he goes, dude, I told my friend, she said his friend told him to report it. And he was like, no, like, I just want to forget about it. I just don't want to do it, you know? And that's just from what you say.
I'll tell you another thing. One of the reasons that people don't report in those situations too is because what happens is if you report in that situation, I'm not saying this is the case, but it has been the case in some instances that if you report, you've outed yourself now.
What do you mean?
If you report and you're in that relationship or something like that, then now you've come out. So by reporting now, you might have not come out, but now you've come out by reporting. Okay. And sometimes when people investigate those, they don't investigate those cases in the right way. They get really curious. They ask lots of questions that they wouldn't ask other victims. And so you have to be very careful there. And so and the other thing that happens in that case is that either they're going to be outed or they feel like they're less of a man because that happened.
So talking with my team, right? We're mostly males, except my fiance. You know, she helps out with the social media side of things. Mm-hmm. Talking with the male side of my team, you know, one of my friends, he's Hispanic. You know, in the Hispanic world, we say machismo, which is like manliness. You know, and he goes, yeah, dude, like you don't want to report one if it happens from a female because you're like, oh, you got beat up by a girl, and then if it happened for another from a male, it's like,
you're less of a man.
Are you gay?
That's right.
Like, and that's the thing. Society nowadays is trying to like make it so hard for these people to get the help they need.
It's increasingly difficult.
So, and like you said, like with this, I'm hoping to show them that, you know, someone else cares. And my mom put it the best when she said, speaking for the unspoken, you know, I love it. I'm trying to give them the courage to stand up for themselves, you know? Yeah. But with that being said, thank you for hitting up on those stats, you know? I truly appreciate it. So let's move off to what we know, what I know, which is the campus world of things, you know? Mm-hmm. So somebody outside of in Wayland, I think you contact enough people to let them know where 303,
Yeah.
303, where to go, where they
Yeah.
can find you. What about in other universities? Do they have the same kind of?
Yes, every university is required to have a Title IX coordinator, a Title IX administrator. If for some reason somebody doesn't want to report it to the Title IX administrator, Title IX coordinator, they can tell the campus counselor. Counselors are going to be confidential. They can't tell anything, so they may encourage you to report it, but they're not going to report it. So there's lots of
Right.
different options on college campuses. One of the other things, if the sexual assaults just happen, you want to call the police, the campus PD or the local PD, because they've got to be able to get evidence, and so they call it a sexual assault nurse investigation, where they go in and they have to get the evidence, where they might be able to find hairs, or they might be able to find semen or some kind of DNA to tie another person to that particular sexual assault. And so it's very important not to use the bathroom, not to shower, all of those kinds of things. And so that's why it's very important that we educate people. But every campus is federally mandated to have a Title IX person on campus, and they're supposed to train. You have to have primary prevention and ongoing training.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
That's awesome that there is that help there. So let me ask you something. Do you believe that in high school there should be a class, like a mandatory class on this, on how what people should do in case of this happening?
I think it should, but it probably won't, because in high school, in college you have a little more control in college, but in high school, people have a say so on what you do with their kids. So you can't discipline kids. You can't. When I was going to school, we got paddled. Now that's rare. You don't see kids getting paddled. And so as far as like sex education, some people might not want somebody at the school talking to their kids about sex or sexual assault or any of that kind of stuff. And so there's a disconnect, and it's very hard. Sometimes you see the athletes get it, but the entire student body is not getting it. But one of the things and I'm glad you asked that question, is because I believe it starts in high school.
Yes.
When we're getting it, I'm undoing, when people come to college and they go to different colleges that I train at all across the United States, I'm going and I'm undoing learned behaviors
Yes.
that they learned in high school, that were taking place in high school. And so I'm going and I'm demystifying, I'm breaking this down, because one time I was training some students, and one of them came up to me, and he was 23 years old, and he said, "Thank you for telling me what consent is. I never knew."
Right.
He's 23 years old.
And the thing is, like, for example, you got freshmen coming in every single year, every single semester. And the thing is, they think, I'm far away from home.
Yep.
I got my own spot. Mom and dad aren't in charge anymore. I'm invincible.
That's right.
Right? You of course, like, we try to be like, oh, there's different backgrounds, this and that. But at the end of the day, you come here, you're away from home. You feel like you're on top of the world.
You're not under you're not under their wing anymore. And so sometimes people come to campus and they engage in things that they wouldn't have done back home. So they engage in drinking or smoking marijuana or dating people that they wouldn't normally date, or going further than they would have normally gone before, because they're in college, or they feel the pressure, or maybe they just hadn't been in this situation and it's been more controlled before. So you have all of that going on, and so it's very hard to come in and really break all that down. But that's what we do. As soon as they get here, we break all that down in a real and powerful way, to where they understand it and they get it. Their eyes are open.
Because I know people that are upperclassmen compared to me, they're juniors and seniors, or they're freshmen coming in. Since I'm a sophomore, they tell me, oh, my school didn't offer a health class. We didn't talk about safe sex. We didn't talk about any of that. Like, I learned that from my parents, but and that's the thing. Like, I was lucky enough that I took 2 health classes. I took one in middle school, took one in high school. High school is obviously not in the curriculum, but because I took this EMT class, I was able to take that too.
Yeah.
And the thing is, in my opinion, I'm not a parent, but I believe those things are important for kids to learn.
I totally agree. One of the things I'll tell you is that freshmen are most at risk. So freshmen and sophomores are going to be most at risk for sexual assaults. They're going to be the ones that are preyed on, not upperclassmen. So it's always usually the freshmen and sophomores that people are going after. And so that's a special population that's the most vulnerable that we have to reach, and you have to reach very early. One of the other things I'll tell you too is one of the issues on college campuses, and one of the issues that you'll see even in high schools because I believe at some point it's going to drive down into high school anyway, is that a lot of people are just doing online trainings. I'm not a big proponent of online training because you can't ask videos questions.
Exactly.
You just don't get that interaction. We don't know, somebody's doing a cookie cutter presentation for everybody, and unfortunately this is not a one size fits all thing, and sometimes those people are not experts in that area, and so there's just problems that occur and lots of misunderstandings that occur, so that people maybe sat through something but they didn't get it, and so the problem continues to perpetuate itself.
Yeah, I'm really big on quote unquote old school things, pencil and paper.
Yeah.
Not big on online courses. Not big on not being able to be face to face with the teacher. But thank you so much for coming out and making time out of your busy day.
No, I appreciate it.
With everything you have going on to sit down and talk to me about this, because this is actually kicking off the mini series that we have for the month of February on this that we're trying to raise awareness for. But if you heard my podcast before, you know that I always ask everybody their message at the end. So today, let's target those people who are either not scared, I would say, but who need a little bit of courage to stand up for themselves, or the people that to understand not to put themselves in this situation. What's your message out to the public about this?
My message is that you matter. And so you matter. What happens to you matters. Your life matters. And so one of the things that I would say in getting this out is that the reason that it's so important for you to tell your story, for you to report anything that's happened to you, is because there are not a lot of people that are going out committing rapes and sexual assaults and domestic violence. In fact, it's a small number of people who just reoffend. They do it over and over and over again. And so if you don't tell your story, then the person that did that to you is going to go and do that to somebody else. They're going to do it until they get caught. And I can tell you this from personal experience and things that I've had to investigate, cases that I've been a part of or cases that I've read about, is that it's the same people that do it over and over again. Your story can save somebody else's life, and somebody else telling their story could have saved your life. And so you matter. Tell your story so that we can stop the cycle.
Dr. Lawerence, once again, thank you so much for joining me here.
Thank you for the invitation.
Guys, like I said earlier, M&T Professional Cleaning Service, hit them up. I'll leave everything down in the description below. And if you're a friend or if you are a victim of this, just like Dr. Lawerence said, your story matters. And I'll leave you guys with that. I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for joining me. Leave a review. Leave a comment. Let me know what you'd like to see in the future, what you want me to improve on. And until the next one.